Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Miles has always been a man of routine. He liked to know where the keys were, how much money he had in the monthly budget, and what time each child left school. For 23 years, he and Vanessa built a life that, from anyone else's perspective, was solid. They had 3 healthy kids, a comfortable house, financial stability, and a certain predictability in their days, something he always valued. The marriage wasn't like it used to be, but he saw that as part of normal life with someone for the long haul. Vanessa seemed present, even if quiet. And he learned to get used to the lack of spontaneous hugs and long kisses. But something started to bother Zoe. The youngest daughter was always observant. While Chloe was in college and Dylan spent more time playing video games than being around the family, Zoe noticed small things. She was the first one to notice her mom's new habits. One day, while helping Vanessa fold clothes, she saw a skirt she'd never seen before. It was short and tight. Vanessa didn't even try to hide it, just said she was trying to modernize her wardrobe. A few days later, Zoe found a bright red lipstick in the bathroom. Vanessa never wore strong makeup. And even stranger, a new perfume began lingering in the hallway on the days she went to work. Miles took longer to realize. He spent most of his day buried in spreadsheets and meetings, believing everything was under control at home. Until an email with a credit card statement arrived. It was the additional card assigned to Vanessa, but some expenses caught his attention. An expensive restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon, a florist in another neighborhood. That unsettled him. He felt his stomach drop. He opened the full statement. There were purchases spaced out, small ones, but they followed a pattern. They matched someone trying to hide things, but not very carefully. That night, while Zoe did homework, he brought up the topic with her. He asked if she'd noticed anything different at home. The response came quickly, almost like she'd been waiting for the question. Zoe told him about the new clothes, the perfumes, the makeups. She said it felt strange, but maybe it was just her age. Or an attempt for Mom to feel beautiful again. Miles stayed silent. He didn't want to involve his daughter any more than she already was. He thanked her and went to the bedroom, his head spinning. The next day, he went to his lawyer. He asked for help preparing 3 documents, a separation agreement, a post-nuptial contract, and the divorce papers. Everything done in silence, no fanfare. He needed to protect himself before any confrontation. Memories of the life he built with Vanessa crossed his mind like flashes. Their first Christmas together. The night they found out they would be parents to Chloe. Family Sundays, birthdays, midnight hugs. It was all real. But now it felt distant, like an old photo forgotten in a drawer. During dinner, Vanessa talked normally, but Miles barely heard what she said. He was focused on the movement of her hands, her facial expressions, searching for any sign of truth or lie. She seemed relaxed, perhaps because she thought everything was still hidden. Zoe, across the table, watched the two of them in silence. She knew. Miles knew. Only Vanessa pretended not to see the truth already seeping through the walls of the house. Later, while Vanessa was taking a shower, Miles went into the office and opened the last drawer of the closet, where he kept important documents. He pulled out the 3 envelopes. In one, the separation papers. In another, the post-nuptial agreement. And in the third, the formal divorce request. He read them all again, even though he already knew the content. He needed to be sure he was doing this with clarity. With a broken heart, but with feet on the ground. Vanessa came out of the shower, drying her hair, when he called her to talk. His voice sounded firm, but tired. She entered the room, saw the papers on the bed and froze. She didn't ask anything. She just looked. Miles then directly asked if there was someone. The question hung in the air, dense and heavy. Vanessa hesitated. Tried to smile. said he was overreacting. That it was all in his head. But Miles' gaze didn't waver. He knew that woman. He knew when she was lying. He repeated the question. This time, without beating around the bush. And she didn't have the strength to deny it. That's when the truth began to leak through the cracks. Not completely yet, still surrounded by denials and excuses. But it was clear, something had changed. Something had happened. And the name Miles would hear next would only confirm what his heart had already screamed for days. The dinner, the perfume, the small expenses. All of it now seemed to scream the same thing: the love he believed was solid was slipping through his fingers. And even with a hurting heart, he knew the moment to confront what was behind those changes had come. The silence between the two already said more than any argument. And what would come next would change the course of that family forever. Vanessa stared at the papers on the bed as if she couldn't read. She passed her eyes over them once, then again, but her face remained still. Miles remained standing, arms crossed, heart pounding hard. He had already made the decision: he wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't seek revenge, just wanted the truth. But even with all the evidence, it still hurt to believe that she had done this. That the woman who shared so much with him was actually living another story while he thought they were just going through another tough phase. She finally spoke, but used short words, trying to minimize the seriousness with justifications. She said she had been feeling invisible, that she needed to remember she was still desired, that she lost her footing after the kids grew up and each one went their own way. She tried to pull the conversation toward the emotional side, but Miles interrupted. He wanted to know who it was. The name. He wanted to put a face to the betrayal. He was direct. And after hesitating, Vanessa whispered, "Grant Walters." The name dropped like a sentence. He had already heard of this colleague. Knew he was on the marketing team. Remembered a corporate dinner months ago, where she mentioned him with too many praises. A charismatic guy, divorced, always ready with jokes. Miles swallowed hard, felt heat rise to his face. He asked what they had done. She looked away and said there were feelings involved. That she felt alive being with him. That they had exchanged touches, hugs, kisses. And in a more intense moment, they almost gave in, but stopped. According to her, it was guilt. Because she still loved him. She said this looking into Miles' eyes, her voice low, as if the confession was a plea for forgiveness. That moved him in a strange way. Part of him wished she had lied. Another part thought it would be worse to find out the story went further. Vanessa swore nothing more had happened. That physical contact had limits. But for Miles, the line had already been crossed the moment she allowed herself to feel something for another man. When she chose to hide, nurture the bond, protect the secret instead of the family. He picked up the papers again and placed them on the dresser. He said she could sign them whenever she wanted. Vanessa didn't beg. Didn't try to defend herself anymore. She just stood there, as if emptied inside. Hours later, Miles locked himself in the office. His phone vibrated frequently. They were messages from her. Started with apologies, then attempts to explain. Long texts, filled with words like emptiness, mistake, regret. She repeated that she wanted to fight for the family, that she wanted to be better, that she had drifted away from Grant and ended it. That she would give up everything for him if that were the price to rebuild what they had. The messages continued coming in the following days. In one of them, she wrote that she didn't need the house, nor the car, nor the name. That she would give up everything if that were the price to continue being part of his life. That she would sign any document, including the ones he left on the dresser, and that she would do it without hesitation. But still, she wanted to believe there was something to save. The next afternoon, when he got home from work, he found an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were the 3 signed documents from her. No other words. Just signatures. Attached was a handwritten letter. It was short. It said she was willing to lose everything, except the last chance to remain part of his life. That hit Miles unexpectedly. He expected resistance, denial, maybe even emotional manipulation. But what he saw was surrender. Vanessa admitted the mistake and placed herself completely vulnerable. Even so, the wound still bled. He lay down that night with accelerated thoughts. Remembered every moment of the marriage, the trips with the little kids, the noisy Christmases, the plans to grow old together. Everything now felt distant, like it belonged to another couple. That was the woman he vowed to protect. The one he cared for during postpartum depression. The one he comforted when she lost her father. The one he respected even in the longest silences. And now, it was this same woman who placed him in front of an emotional abyss, full of doubts, pain, and an absence hard to explain. In the following days, Miles kept his distance. Slept in another room, avoided long conversations. Vanessa respected that. She took care of the house, made dinner, but avoided any gesture that might seem insistent. It was as if she understood that from now on, every inch of closeness would have to come from him. And maybe that was exactly what made everything even more confusing. Because, amid all he felt, Miles also saw sincerity in her look. Real pain. Regret that didn't seem rehearsed. And that was what hurt the most. Because, even broken, the love he felt for her still existed somewhere inside him, in direct conflict with the wounded pride. That week, he decided not to tell anyone. Not the kids. They deserved to see things clearly before what was coming. There were still many unanswered questions. And at that moment, time seemed to be the only possible judge. Miles didn't know yet what he would do with that confession, but he was sure of one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The only doubt was, would it be worth rebuilding something on the ruins of pain? Or would it be better to leave everything in the past and go separate ways? That decision was still far off. But when he looked at the signed papers for the last time, he understood that the choice was his, and that the future of the whole family would depend on it. Life under the same roof became strange. Miles and Vanessa signed the papers as if it were the end, but the house continued functioning. 3 kids, a routine involving school schedules, bills to pay, grandparents' visits, birthdays. You couldn't just turn your back. They slept in separate rooms, crossed the hallway without talking, and even the sound of the kettle seemed a reminder that there was a new absence now, which hadn't been there before. The silence between them wasn't the absence of sounds, it was an excess of memories. Zoe, even without knowing all the details, sensed it. She tried to keep things light with the brothers, made jokes during meals, gave long hugs to her mom, started conversations with her dad. It was a desperate attempt to maintain some kind of normalcy amid the tension that dragged like dust in the corners of the house. Chloe called often, wanted to know how things were, but Vanessa said everything was under control, without going into details. Dylan remained stuck in his headphones and the world of games. Pretending nothing was happening was his way of protecting himself. On a Saturday, while making breakfast, Miles asked Vanessa to take the test for diseases. He said it in a direct tone, without anger, like he was asking for a routine exam. She froze. Said she was being honest, that nothing had happened beyond what she had already confessed, but she saw he wouldn't back down. She accepted the request without protest. 2 days later, she came back with the envelope in her hands and placed it on the table. Negative result. Miles looked, confirmed, but didn't say a word. He just stored it. It wasn't about the result, it was about trust. And it wasn't there yet. Vanessa, perhaps sensing the emotional chasm, began to change. She returned to work formally. Divided household tasks better. Took care of the laundry, organized the kitchen, paid the bills. Not out of obligation, but like someone trying to clean up the mess slowly. Small daily gestures that didn't ask for recognition or praise. Just did it. She had stopped talking about the issue, as if she understood that words at this point would only tire people. She acted. And slowly, that beaten-down woman, curled up by guilt, gave way to someone more present. Someone who seemed more mature, even though hurt. Meanwhile, Miles was still digesting the betrayal. He couldn't look at her the same way as before, but he also couldn't ignore the memories. It was like having an open wound on top of an old tattoo. The pain hid the beauty of what was built. On the outside, he faked indifference. Inside, he was in conflict. He started looking for ways to distract himself. Went back to the gym, resumed meetings with work friends. Declined invitations that would bring him too close to tempting situations, but accepted everything that took him away from the house. One invitation, however, caught his attention: the company's year-end party. It was the perfect opportunity to test the boundaries. Vanessa knew the party would happen, but he didn't mention whether he would go. At the last minute, he decided to attend. He took Zoe with him, as a way to fill the space beside him with someone representing innocence, genuine love. During the event, fake smiles, conversations about goals, jokes among colleagues. At one point, a colleague named Rachel, known for crossing lines when drinking, approached. Talked about how he looked different, touched his arm, laughed too loud. Zoe, watching from afar, furrowed her brow. Miles noticed. Rachel tried one more move, getting close to his face, but he gently pushed her away and said he needed to find his daughter. Back in the car, Zoe looked at him with narrowed eyes, half curious, half protective. She asked directly if he still loved his mom. Miles stayed silent. He hadn't expected that question from someone so young, yet so aware. He took a deep breath, turned on the engine, and followed the path back with the question hammering inside. At that moment, he realized that neither the betrayal, nor the distance, nor the signed papers had completely killed what he felt. There was still something, even if it was just pain. A few days later, Zoe went to sleep at a friend's house. Dylan went to the movies with his cousins, and Chloe was still on campus. The house was empty. Miles was reading on the couch when Vanessa appeared with 2 mugs. She placed one on the coffee table and asked if he still took it with sugar. He didn't answer, but took a sip. The conversation came up about an old movie they both had seen in their youth. They talked about the kids, about how each one was growing with such distinct traits. Vanessa began laughing at the memory of a story when Chloe tried to bake a cake and almost burned the oven. Miles smiled. And that was enough for her to fall silent for a moment. Then she thanked him for not exposing everything to the kids. She said she knew how much that could destroy their respect for her. Miles nodded discreetly. He still couldn't praise her, but he also no longer saw a point in punishing her. She stood up, but before leaving the room, she turned and said she was trying. That she didn't expect to win everything back, but at least regain respect. He stayed silent, but listened. And inside, something softened. A few days later, they went for a walk. Without planning, just followed each other after dinner. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It simply existed. In one part of the path, Vanessa commented that she still dreamed of the 3 kids together at home for next Christmas. Miles mentioned that it didn't depend only on her. She replied that she knew. Further ahead, while watching 2 teenagers laughing in a corner, Vanessa paused for a moment and lightly touched his arm. It was a timid, almost instinctive gesture. Miles didn't pull away. And that, however small, made something inside her shine again. On the way back home, the 2 still talked about simple subjects. And when they parted in the hallway, there was hope in her eyes, contained. Miles went to bed unsure of what to think, but for the first time in weeks, he fell asleep without mentally reviewing all her mistakes. He slept remembering the good years. The little kids. The first apartment. When they shared everything, even dreams. For the first time, instead of ruminating on what they lost, he began to remember what could still exist. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something new. Without promises. Without guarantees. But with space to be rebuilt. On the morning of their anniversary, Miles woke up before the kids. Made coffee for himself and stayed in silence for a few minutes, just staring at the cup. The date was marked on the calendar, and even with everything that had happened, his body still recognized that day. In other times, he and Vanessa would exchange symbolic gifts or discreet messages. None of that happened. The routine continued as any other, but deep down, something seemed ready to change. Chloe called to wish them a happy day of the two, as she used to say. Miles thanked her, but didn't extend the conversation. Vanessa, in turn, acted naturally. Dropped the kids off at school, went to the store, came back, organized everything and went upstairs to her room. In the late afternoon, Miles came home from work and saw a letter on the table. It was folded, sealed, with a small sticker glued to the envelope, a detail only they recognized. It was the same symbol they had used on their wedding invitation, 23 years ago. A small drawing of two entwined hands, made by her when they were still just dating. He turned the envelope in his hands for a while, thinking whether he should open it right there or wait. He ended up putting it in his pocket and going upstairs to take a shower. Afterward, he looked for Vanessa, but she wasn't there. Neither were the kids. A note said Zoe and Dylan were with the cousins. Vanessa didn't mention where she was going. That caused him a strange discomfort. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was from the city hospital. The receptionist's voice was objective. Vanessa had been involved in an accident. Miles didn't understand immediately. He asked if it was serious. The receptionist said she was conscious, but injured and under observation. According to reports, she had tried to avoid a dog on the road and lost control of the car. Nothing else was explained. Miles grabbed the keys and left. At the hospital, he found Vanessa still unconscious. A doctor explained that she had bruised her shoulder, suffered scratches, and due to the impact, she needed to stay under observation for precaution. It wasn't serious, but the scare had been big. While she slept, Miles sat by her side, staring at the face he knew so well. He remembered so many things they had gone through together that, for a moment, he felt like he was 20 years younger. He remembered her first hospitalization, when Chloe was born earlier than expected. He remembered how she smiled even in the middle of the pain, saying that it was all worth it if in the end they were together. The feeling now was the same, mixed with sadness, regret, and a cruel doubt. In his pocket was the letter she had left before she left. Miles took it out and, this time, opened it. The text started with a simple request: "If you're reading this, it means you may still listen to me." It was a direct letter, written in her firm, emotional handwriting. She said she knew forgiveness couldn't be demanded or bought, and that she wasn't writing to ask for a second chance, but to hand over the last part of herself. She said that if he accepted the divorce permanently, she would respect that. But if there was still a trace of the love they once shared inside him, then she wanted to try to deserve the place beside him again. At the end of the page, an addition on a separate sheet, unsigned. There, Vanessa said she didn't deserve the husband she had, that she always felt taken care of, welcomed, and heard, but that she let personal emptiness make decisions for her. She said the mistake was entirely hers and that she understood whatever choice he would make from here on out. The words didn't sound like a self-pity speech. It was a clean confession, almost serene. Miles put the letter away. Looked at her again and, for the first time in a long time, felt a kind of pain that wasn't mixed with anger. It was as if all the weight of everything they had lived, the losses, the wrong decisions, and the forgotten gestures, fell on him all at once. But instead of sinking, he stayed there, motionless, holding her hand carefully. He didn't need to respond with words yet. That was already a response. Vanessa woke up 2 hours later. Her eyes were still drowsy, searching the ceiling, then the wall. When they turned to the side, they found Miles sitting, silent, with the letter in his lap. She looked at him without saying anything. He brought his hand to her face, moved the hair stuck to her forehead by a bandage, and said, "We'll start over. Together. From zero." She cried, but didn't speak. She just held his hand as if she had never wanted to leave the place where she was. The days that followed were about recovery, but not just physically. Miles took care of her as he did in the old days. Cooked, helped with the bandages, fetched the medicine. Not out of obligation. By choice. When the kids asked, he said they were working things out. Not everything was healed, it was true. Some conversations still caused discomfort, memories surfaced at inconvenient moments. But there was a decision made. They didn't want to erase the past. They wanted to transform it. Real love between two people doesn't survive intact. It gets beat up, bleeds, gets tired. Sometimes it stays quiet. But when the two decide it's still worth it, even if only a fragment remains, then that fragment becomes a foundation. And it was on that small piece that Miles and Vanessa started everything anew. With fewer promises, more presence. Fewer speeches, more shared silence. Because there, in the middle of what was left, there was room for something new to bloom. Something stronger, more conscious, and much more real than before. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.